Hey everybody. It seems to me that there are a lot of news stories out there that have to do with geopolitical conflicts, and the geopolitical conflicts seem to take the same basic form. People form up into groups based on stuff like borders or culture, and then the groups fight over resources or sometimes out of revenge. And this is tribal behavior, and I would call it tribalism. And in the midst of all this, leaders seem to be motivated by greed. They often find a way to profit from situations like these. So I've been kind of disillusioned with the news lately because I've been asking myself two questions. Can we get past this kind of behavior? And is it worth paying attention to these stories about geopolitical conflicts if they're just going to be the same, if they're nothing new? Um, Now, I'd like to talk about greed and tribalism further by going into an example. I'd like to talk about what's been going on in the Ukraine lately. And I'm not going to go into the whole conflict. You can look that stuff up on your own. I just want to talk about um, the role of greed and tribalism in this situation. So let's first talk about the role of greed in this situation. Now, there could be personal economic motivations for Putin here. I've read that Putin gets kickbacks, I guess you could call them, from Gazprom in the form of what are euphemistically called value detractions, and I believe they call them that when they're discussing these kickbacks in a financial context. So, what do these kickbacks have to do with what's going on in the Ukraine? Well, I'm not sure I understand all the economic complexities of what's going on, but I have heard that there are energy reserves in the in the Black Sea, and of course Crimea was just annexed by Russia, and Crimea is right on the Black Sea. So some people have suggested that that now Gazprom potentially could develop the resources in the Black Sea, and of course Putin would benefit if Gazprom does more business. He would benefit financially because of those kickbacks. Now, Russia is starting to see that the Ukraine is going in a more western direction, and so maybe it's going to want to control what pipelines it can in order to avoid future disputes. So if there are less political ties with Russia, maybe it's going to be more difficult for Gazprom to get its gas through the pipelines. So again, this relates to Putin because if Gazprom were to benefit, then Putin would as well. So in considering all this, I have to ask myself the question, why does Putin, even need more wealth? He already has 20 residences, 58 aircraft, and 4 yachts. And to me, ego would be the only thing that could explain why he would need even more, given what he already has. Because after you have 2 or 3 houses, the 4th house really isn't 100% necessary. You already have a place to hang out. You have a roof over your head. You have a vacation home or two. So house number 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that would have to be about ego. It would have to be about looking at the possession and saying to yourself, oh wow, I can get this, I'm powerful. So maybe that's what's going on in Putin's head. I mean, seriously, how many houses do you need? How many aircrafts do you need? How many yachts do you need? So you could see how the ego of one man could lead to a whole geopolitical conflict, or it could help lead to that geopolitical conflict. All right, so let's talk about the role of tribalism in this situation that has been going on in the Ukraine. The main military reason for Russia being involved, I would say, is that it wants Sevastopol, which is a port in Crimea, and this is a port that does not freeze over during the winter, unlike Russia's other ports up north. So Sevastopol offers a major strategic advantage. Okay, but this begs the question: why do they need a military advantage in the first place? Well, you could say, all right, you need a military for defense. I can understand that, but why do they need defense? Why does anybody need to defend themselves? Well, isn't it because people already have this tendency to form up into groups and to attack each other? And isn't this tribalism? So maybe the only reason why we need defense is just because of tribalism in the first place. And then once you need a defense, that means that you're going to have to secure your defensive assets, which can lead to open conflict. So that's how tribalism can lead to open military conflict, or that's one way. Now, economic reasons could come down to tribalism as well. So there are other people involved in this whole conflict besides Putin, and maybe they don't just have purely personal financial interests. Maybe they feel patriotic. Maybe they want to have closer economic ties with the Ukraine because they want more business from the Ukraine going into Russia, so that all the Russians can benefit more. I didn't mention the issue of agriculture before, but Ukraine is an agriculturally productive region, and so maybe there are some people who want agricultural goods to be more accessible to Russia. Okay. Now, I know this sounds naive, but why can't we just share the wealth, right? Wouldn't it be easier on everybody if economic conflicts were just thrown in the garbage and there was fair trade between everybody, and nobody favored any one group? Okay, so here again, it seems like tribalism could be playing a role. Why is it that people feel like they have to economically benefit their own group if they really feel that way? Why do Russians need a bigger share of the wealth? Why does anybody need a bigger share of the wealth? I mean, I know there are poor people, but is that what this is about? I mean, it just seems like maybe poverty could be dealt with in other ways as opposed to, trying to get more wealth. I mean, it just seems like this is about this instinct to just get more for your own group. So are we destined to fight with each other because of these two motivating factors? That is greed-based ego, or ego-based greed, and tribalism. Are we destined to fight just because of those two things? Well, maybe people can be convinced that they don't need to have tons of belongings to be respected and important in this society. Not everyone is egotistical, so maybe that could be fixed with culture. Maybe people can be convinced not to be egotistical. So maybe there's hope on the egotism front. But what about tribalism? Well, let's talk a little bit about what tribalism is, or where it comes from. The evolutionary explanation seems to be that it was just inborn, like we're just born with some sort of impulse or tendency to form up into groups and fight, and maybe that tendency evolved because we needed to do that in order to survive and compete over resources when we were evolving. Anyway, there are other explanations for why tribalism and in-group favoritism, which is related, exist. The psychologist Tajfel suggests that people try to prove to themselves that their groups are superior, or they want to believe that. And maybe they want to believe that to make themselves feel good. And then once they believe that their groups are superior and that they're better, they want to help them. They want to help those groups. But this doesn't really explain how or why people form up into groups in the first place. Are people forming up into groups just because they want to try to convince themselves that they're superior, or that their groups are superior, or that they're part of something special? I don't know. It seems like it would be easier to do that in other ways. Just believe it. If you're convincing yourself of stuff, just believe that you're special or part of something special. Realistic conflict theory suggests that competition over scarce resources causes in-group favoritism, and maybe tribalism by extension. But is realistic conflict theory relevant here? I mean, again, we don't really have scarce resource. Well, I mean, they're somewhat scarce, but I mean, don't we already have a plenitude of stuff? Aren't we at a situation where we could share the wealth if we really wanted to? So I think that it would just be more advantageous for people to work to grow the economy. So maybe if we have an instinct to form up into groups and fight, we can override it, just like we override our violent instincts. And there's a book by Lawrence H. Keeley called War Before Civilization. And just a quote from the Wikipedia article on that book, it says, in modern tribal societies, death rates from war are 4 to 6 times the highest death rates in the 20th century, in 20th century Germany or Russia. So it seems like by creating society, by creating the culture that we have, by creating a lot of wealth and by creating laws, we've lessened the murder rates. So if we can control our instincts that way, maybe we can also control our instincts to form up into groups. Maybe we can create a culture where that's discouraged. So is there hope for us? Possibly, but that doesn't mean that I want to keep hearing about the same kind of barbarism again and again. So to go back to those questions that I was asking previously, let's ask them again. Can we get past this kind of behavior? Possibly. And is it worth paying attention to these stories about geopolitical conflicts if they're just going to be the same? Well, not necessarily. So I think that's basically all I have to say. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to leave me some comments or get in touch with me on Twitter, I am at MichaelStreejan. Thank you.